Welcome back to the deep dive. So for our mission today, we are diving, really headfirst, into a sound world that many people might define by its capacity to, well, repel them. We're talking about noise music. And when you hear that word, you likely think of something loud, jarring, maybe even offensive to the ear. But we're here to show you that noise in an artistic context is so much more than a messy genre. It can be a profound philosophical statement and even a manual for anti-capitalist resistance.
It truly can. And for this deep dive, our focus is on the architect of that statement, the pioneer who's been absolutely central to Japanese noise music since the 1980s. Masami Akita, known to the world as Merzbow.
His work is often described with these contradictions.
Oh, absolutely. It's violent, but it's meditative. It's destructive, yet it's also profoundly organic. And you, the listener, really shouldn't approach this as simple music to be consumed. You almost have to treat it as a philosophical experiment in hearing.
And the roots of that experiment, they tell us exactly what he's trying to deconstruct. The name Merzbow comes from the Dada artist Kurt Schwitters, specifically from his huge walk-in collage called Merzbow.
And for those who might not know, Dada was that early 20th century anti-art movement. It was a direct rejection of the logic and aesthetics of a society that had, just plunged the world into war.
That context is so important.
It's crucial. Dada used fragmentation, nonsense, anything to critique order. And that name, Merzbow, it just perfectly defines Akita's whole principle. It is the deconstruction of existing structures.
So breaking down traditional music, harmony, composition, all of it.
All of it, followed by the reorganization of the fragments that are left behind.
Okay, so his entire 4-decade career isn't just about making loud sounds. It's dedicated to what the source material calls the politicality of the act of listening. Let's unpack that. How can the simple act of listening be a political act?
Well, Merzbow's core argument is that noise isn't just loud sound. It is, and this is a quote, the counterattack of sound excluded from the social order.
The counterattack of excluded sound.
Right. Think about all the sounds our society and culture deem acceptable. Pop music, standardized classical structures, audio that's carefully edited to fit an algorithm. Noise, in this philosophy, is everything else. Everything that's been pushed to the margins. The static, the feedback, the grit, the sounds that don't sell. And by deliberately listening to and prioritizing those excluded sounds, you're performing an act of resistance.
Resistance against the cultural gatekeepers, a counterattack by sound. Where did an idea like this even find the fertile ground to grow?
For that, we have to look at the late 1970s in Tokyo. It was this tremendously volatile and fertile underground environment, not defined by one genre, but by a massive collision of different artistic movements.
What was colliding?
You had the very serious, highly academic modern music composers, people like Takahashi Yuji and Takemitsu Toru, and their work was butting right up against the raw improvisational energy of punk and free jazz.
That sounds like a sonic pressure cooker. But the source material also mentions a strong influence from the art world.
Absolutely. Akita himself studied art history, so he was actively engaging with performance, with theory, with happenings. This is why really Merzbow performances were considered less like concerts and more like performance art.
Or even action painting, but with sound.
Exactly. It was designed to physically involve, sometimes pretty aggressively, the audience and the space itself. It was physical chaos.
So these early shows were truly visceral. You had to be there. But that kind of action art doesn't scale easily. How did Merzbow go from physical happenings to becoming a global name?
That is where the infrastructure of the cassette underground became so crucial. This DIY ethos, it relied entirely on home recording and a postal network.
So completely bypassing the commercial structures, no major labels, no mainstream media.
None. We are talking about a global network of tape traders sending poorly copied, sometimes unlabeled cassettes to each other all over the world. The sources describe it as a literal precursor to the distributed, non-commercial nature of the modern internet.
It allowed a radical anti-establishment sound to just spread globally without ever touching a centralized corporate structure.
And that shift from the physical performance to the distributed cassette is a really good bridge to the sound itself. Because while it started as physical action, the core aesthetic really solidified around this massive paradox.
Okay, let's get to that paradox. Because when you first listen to Merzbow, it sounds like pure, absolute sonic destruction, like a machine shop collapsing. And yet, the source material insists his aesthetic focuses on regeneration, not destruction. How do you get new life from that level of noise?
It's about creating a totally blank sonic canvas. The noise first pulverizes everything: conventional genre, structure, harmony, easily digestible emotion. It's a wiping of the auditory slate.
Okay, a total reset.
But out of that destruction, a new, highly complex order emerges because all these sonic particles, the feedback shrieks, the static bursts, they overlap infinitely, and they push your hearing into an entirely new sensory dimension where you have to find your own meaning.
It's an enforced state of freedom, then. You can't rely on a beat or a melody, so your ear has to actively create the structure. That connects perfectly to that quote from 1994. Noise is the sound of freedom. No one controls it.
What's fascinating here is how his actual production process mirrors that idea of uncontrolled, chaotic creation. His studio process is often likened to an ecosystem or some kind of biological variation. You have the raw, unpredictable, analog noise-squealing feedback, tape loops, rampant vintage effects, and he combines that with the hyper-precision of digital glitch technology.
So when the source material calls this the resonance of the inorganic and the organic, we can break that down pretty simply, right?
Exactly. The organic is that unpredictable flow of pure analog current, the physical warmth of tape, the feedback that changes based on, air pressure.
Yeah.
The inorganic is the sharp, precise, mathematically generated sound of the digital glitch, which came in when he started using computers. That synergy is the sound of the self-sustaining chaos. It's both messy and precise.
Let's dig into the mechanics of that chaos, because his tools changed so dramatically. In the early era, the focus was absolutely on physical noise. We're talking metal junk, microphones stuck right into amps, magnetic tape, all direct linked.
A very physical, almost dangerous way to make sound.
And that tactile approach, it changed a lot in the mid-1990s with Macs and digital gear. This must have given him incredible control and massive changes in the granularity of the sound.
Precisely. And by granularity for the listener, we mean the fineness of the sound particles. Digital tools let you smash a sound into microscopic pieces, controlling their texture in a way physical tape just can't.
You would assume this shift to digital meant he was trying to tame the noise, to organize it. But the sources are clear. He was never interested in control.
No, he wasn't. The analysis says Akita actively sought out the collapse point of control. He wanted to push the equipment, both analog and digital, until it failed spectacularly, but in an intentional way, and then capture that moment of machine breakdown.
And his studio reflects that goal.
Oh, completely. The sources describe it not as a recording facility, but like an organic body. Countless analog devices and patch cables intersecting like veins and nerves, creating feedback loops that feed back into themselves. So Merzbow's sound is defined as the recorded process of mutual interference between humans and machines.
It's a sonic document of the struggle between human consciousness and circuit board failure.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the huge ideological shift in the 2000s when his work moved from internal sonic architecture to this very pointed external social critique. This was when Merzbow publicly embraced animal welfare and veganism.
And this wasn't just a minor change. It transformed the stated purpose of his noise.
It completely redefined it. Noise was no longer just about exploring the limits of sound. In works like Animal Liberation and the Ecoid series, noise was explicitly reframed as a critique of anthropocentrism.
And for anyone unfamiliar, anthropocentrism is just human-centered thinking, the idea that humans are the most important species.
Yes. So the noise took on the meaning of an ecological resistance movement. The chaos in the sound became a sonic representation of the destruction caused by industrialized society on the planet and on non-human animals. The noise became the voice of the silenced, which now included non-human life.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because there's this powerful, almost delightful paradox in his standing. Merzbow's music is the ultimate antithesis to capitalist commodity forms. By its very nature, unlistenable, unstructured, abrasive, it is the opposite of music that sells.
It's anti-commodity music, and yet, paradoxically, this violent anti-capitalist sound has been canonized. It gets high praise in major global festivals and high culture art museums and academic circles. It's a funny twist. The ultimate rejection of the system is often celebrated by the system itself.
That paradox just proves the undeniable power of the philosophy he established. And speaking of global reach, by the 1990s, Merzbow was completely mythologized across the global underground.
He basically set the definition for the genre. His Japanese noise became this mandatory reference point for Western critics. They often framed it as this unique synthesis of, Oriental tranquility and violence. And his influence just spread like wildfire to U.S. artists like Wolf Eyes and Prurient, and more experimental figures like Alva Noto in Germany.
And that influence wasn't just in the West. The noise scene spread everywhere, Indonesia, Russia, South America. The core philosophy was so clear and so democratizing. Anyone can dismantle the world with sound.
That is an incredibly empowering message for any DIY artist.
Which brings us right to the present moment. Because in the 2020s, with AI music generation becoming standard, Merzbow's relevance is actually heightened.
It really is.
How is that? If an AI can generate infinitely complex, beautiful, structured sound, how does human-made chaos compete?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that Merzbow's noise now symbolizes non-algorithmic chaos created by human consciousness. AI is programmed to find order, beauty, patterns that listeners will prefer. As that generated music becomes more and more orderly, harmonious, predictable, Merzbow's intentional chaos stands out as a trace of real life.
It's the recording of human struggle, the distortion of consciousness itself, fighting back against computational perfection.
Precisely. Scholars characterize his sound as the last wilderness-resisting 21st century music without a body. The AI can generate perfect structure, but it struggles to generate that essential human-driven collapse that Akita cultivates. It's a sonic fingerprint of an imperfect creator.
That is a phenomenal way to frame his legacy. We started with Merzbow dismantling musical structure, and we end with him dismantling social structure and maybe resisting the pervasive structure of technology itself. His journey really proves that noise isn't just a genre, it's a fundamental act of listening, living, and social critique.
It absolutely moves beyond genre. Merzbow is, in essence, recording the vibration of existence itself. This deep dive shows us that the messiest art can often carry the clearest message, simply by refusing to conform. And the source material leaves us with this final provocative description of noise. It says noise is the voice of life not yet named.
So what does this all mean for you?
Well, if Merzbow's chaotic sound represents the ultimate expression of human consciousness resisting the order imposed by algorithms, we're left to ask. In a world that is increasingly structured by AI, where neatness and optimization are the goals, what new essential truths can only be communicated through the sheer beautiful chaos that we create?